Hi YouTube, it's August, it's summertime. One of the ways I've been spending my summer and not making videos has been by replacing all of the wood on my deck. Some of this wood was pretty old, like 1978, so I've replaced most of it already with new boards. I've reinforced some of the center pilings. Got one or two down there that I'll be replacing the footings underneath them, as well as the pilings themselves. I'm in the process of rebuilding the banister or railing system, and I'll be replacing most of that wood. But one thing I noticed is that's giving me a lot of leftover wood. Some good, some rotted, some fair. What I've decided is I'm going to take some of the fair boards, and because fall and hunting season are approaching, I decided I need a bench to zero in my AR-15 and some other toys I may decide to use this winter. And what I figure I'll do is I'll build a little picnic table, and that's what this video will be about. And as the work progresses, I'll splice in different parts. Thanks. Have a good day. This is not going to be a precision build by any means. Its intended duration of existence is maybe a year or two, if that. It's acknowledged the deck boards being used are old. It's not going to be a 8-foot picnic table because it's just me here, and all I need is a little shooter's bench, and that's what this will be. I'll be using basically just the tools that you see in front of you. First step will be to start cutting boards to 5 or 6 foot length. Mr. Basics of the table, it'll be 5 times 6 inches wide, 6 feet long. I think for a single shooter that's plenty. You can build or buy a saw, 2 saw horses, and lay a piece of plywood on it, or buy a table. But for my purposes here, I just put some scrap lumber underneath the what'll become the tabletop to add some rigidity to it. Cut off some 2x4s from the old deck wood, and of course these will be the bottom reinforcements for the deck table. I will bevel the edges of them 45 degrees so that if you bump your knee on them, it doesn't hurt too much. Here I just finished beveling a first cut in a 2x4 with my table saw. Yes, I am wearing safety goggles. You can see the bevel is neatly done. Here you see the concept beginning to take shape. Most of the videos online recommend using glue. And I think if I wanted my table to last 5 or 6 years, I probably would. And I would use Liquid Nails Construction. This is why I put a tube of liquid nails there so you can see it. I'm going to use 3-inch deck screws. At least 2 screws on each segment for each board. They'll be staggered so that if there's a split in the wood from one of the screws, although I'm going to drill them, there might not be any splits. The split, even if it extends, 5 or 6 inches up, it's not going to hit one of the other screws because they'll be staggered. And I think this gives you a pretty good idea of the shape of the deck. I'm going to do a better measurement and move that board over a little bit and move that one that way. But I just wanted you to see the concept as it's shaping up. The top part of the table is now basically complete. except for a little trimming down there. I'll trim the boards so they're equal. But as you can see, top of the table is done. Next step is going to be to build the legs. I'm going to use an A-frame construction, and I'll be using 2x6 for my legs. Just happen to have some spare 2x6, and they'll be cut in at a 30-degree angle, parallel on both sides, and I'll probably make them 32.5 inches tall. And proceeding. Happy about that? No, I might fill that up with epoxy. Am I happy about that knot? No, I might fill it up with epoxy. One thing you want to look out for when you're using old deck wood as the basis for any structure is when you cut it, keep an eye out for cracks that run completely through like this. This wood is totally unusable for anything structural. That's because that crack does run all the way through, and if you tried using it for something, you could run into this scenario. Of course, the boards are mounted to the wood at a 90-degree angle using 3-inch deck screws through the board and into the 2x4. Okay, when you mount your cross brace, remember to mount it on the inside. That's because you're going to have a brace running from the center beam to it. If you put it on the outside, it wouldn't be the same. I mount my beams so the top of the seat is going to be 16 inches off the ground. And what I'll do is I'll make a chalk mark where that'll be, and then I'll install the beams. I'll do it on both sides. I'll make sure it's parallel or level. Positioning the cross beam of the A-frame. Notice I'm using a C-clamp to hold it in place while I adjust the level. I've also put boards underneath the board supporting the deck to ensure that the deck itself is level. There's no point in getting this level if this is not. So everything is level at this point. You can just barely, I hope, make out the bubble. This is level, and that end will be level. And I'll C-clamp that in place, and then I'll just screw it in. Not using 4-inch screws as someone else may have suggested on another website. That's because this 2x6 board is actually not 2x6. It's actually something like 1 3/4 by 5.5, if my memory's right. Let's see, on the top we definitely got only about 1 3/4. So the actual dimension is different than the advertised dimension, and for that reason a 4-inch nail is not appropriate because it would go right through. So I'll be using a 3-inch screw. I should have said 4-inch screw is not appropriate because it'll go right through. So I'll use 4-inch screws for the initial pinning. Later on I'll slide a bolt through to increase the load-bearing capability of the A-frame. And like I said, there'll be a 2x4 cross beam to the center bar of the deck. Anyway, that's where we're at now. And I'm doing it this way rather than lay it out as an A and put the cross beam and all that on, because I recognize some of you might not have that much skill with measurements, and consequently I'm doing it one step at a time, and it takes a little longer, but you can see the progress in the process. Okay, here's a trick. You'll notice that the legs are squared to the table, both sides. I've placed the beam from the support to the cleat, roughly in the middle of the cleat. I take my T-square, I'm going to make a mark running right down there once this camera is out of my hand, and I will repeat the same process up here. I will make a mark along that line. That will tell me the angle of the cross piece, and I will cut at that angle, and that means that the cross piece will fit very neatly in place. I'll rejoin you in a minute. The support strut is then glued and screwed in place. 2 screws will go through the outside here. 2 screws will go in the base there. And then on to the other side. Just a personal aside, I like to give anything that's going to come in contact with the soil a coating of automotive undercoating asphalt. This will be absorbed by the wood, and my personal experience has been that it greatly extends the life of a piece of wood in contact with the ground. Others may disagree, may not like the technique, but I find for me it works. The second set of legs is in place. As before, the top of the bench will be 16 inches off the ground. This table will be made level, and then I will place the support board running across in a level fashion. Okay, the second A-frame has been positioned. Notice how I use C-clamps to adjust the positioning of it. The board, the table, is parallel or level, and so is this support board. Both are parallel and level to each other. 2 semi-critical measurements that had to be observed for the second board. The first measurement, of course, is that the seat shall be 16 inches off the ground, the bottom of the seat. That's been observed. The second is I want these bench support arms to be equal. This one came out 7.5 inches on the bottom. They are both cut to the same angle with the same dimension treated lumber. So this one is 8 inches. I'm going to move it back a 1/2 inch so that it's the same as the other one. Otherwise I would have to cut off a 1/2 inch here, which really isn't that big a deal. But I wanted you to see how it's progressing and how it is that I do the adjustments. By loosening and tightening one C-clamp after another, I'm able to slide the board back. That's all. Okay, another step you want to do at this point, after you've made your second set of cross beams, is in all 4 of the legs, using a flat wood drill, we're going to put a 3/8 inch bolt and washer. I've already drilled this hole, so that you can see. On the back side of it, we add another washer. Now, let's try that again. A little less fumble fingered with my left hand. Okay, I'm adding a lock washer. Some people don't bother. They just peen the bolt or peen the threads over when done. But I like using a lock washer. It allows me to remove it later should I choose to. Possibly when I'm taking the deck apart. I've got to switch hands. Sorry about that. Okay. There we go. The purpose of the washer, of course, is to distribute the load around. Otherwise, the thread and the head of the bolt would both sink into the wood. This 3/8. And you notice that the restrainer put that here. Just run out of hands, but I think you'll get the idea. In this fashion, I'll tighten the thread. Hold on a minute. Okay, the bolt is tightened. I tighten enough so that the washer just begins to sink into the wood on both sides. That kind of seals the space. I'll be putting a second one in here, and I'll do 2 in each of the other cross members. Once that's done, the table will be ready to flip over. Main body of the table is completed, bolted together. It will now be turned over and put over by the 25 yardstick so that I have less weight to carry before I set the boards. Okay, basically what you see here will be the completed table. I still have to bolt down these 2 boards. I'll be making a center cleat to connect them there in the center. And of course I'll be trimming off those edges. The wood can be painted. We are 25 yards from the targets way over there. And that's good. And sitting here like this, I'm sitting on it, and it's fine. And I will trim the backboard there. As you noticed, I did not fit it for a second bench because this is not a picnic table. This is a shooting table. But there you have it. I will post one more picture tomorrow after the boards are in place for the seat. Okay, the deck board, the edges of it have been trimmed so that it's more or less even. The deck, with the age of this Halo XL 450 rangefinder, has been positioned so that it's just 25 yards away from the target on this side, which means the muzzle of the gun will be 25 yards from the target. The final step is going to be to fasten cleats, these 3 cleats, to the bench seat and flip it over and attach the bench to the deck itself. I've spaced the boards so that they're about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch apart. That's just personal preference on how I like my seat. I did not bother to do that for the tabletop because, number one, this wood is all 35 to 40 years old, and any shrinking it's going to do was accomplished long ago. And it is my belief that the dimensions of the wood as they are today, since the wood has been exposed to the elements for 35 to 40 years, are pretty much going to be unchanged from what they are today. And consequently, I've pushed the boards together so much that a nail won't drop down in between them. Other than that, going to drill in 2 holes in each cleat and attach them to the board. Because although this is a 2x4, its actual dimension is at least 1/4 of an inch less in thickness, and the other boards I'm using are what's called 5/4 boards, 5/4 deck boards. I'm not going to use a 3-inch nail because that would protrude through. Instead, I'm going to use a 2.5-inch nail or screw. If, however, I was using 2x6 deck boards for my seat on top of a 2x4, then I would go ahead and use a 3-inch screw. But as stated, because these are 5/4 boards underneath, I will just use a 2.5-inch screw. That said, I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, here's this side of the bench almost done. I got one screw left to do on this side. There we go. This side is done. Now do that side and we'll be complete.